So good morning, everybody. My name is Melissa McGee-Collier. I am a career public servant. I've been with the state of Mississippi since 1995. And over the past 25 years, I've had quite a journey through MDEQ. In addition to sitting under 5 different executive directors, I've worked in various places and offices within the agency. Title V permitting was my initial start with the agency. I went from Title V permitting to compliance and enforcement. After compliance and enforcement, I used that knowledge about the permitting side and the compliance side to actually help with the development of our internal database in our data integration division. Not long after that, under Trudy, the Office of Community Engagement was developed, and I was named as the director of that office, and I've been in that position since 2010. And so what I want to do with you today is show you some of the things that I've learned over the years in the Office of Community Engagement, working not just with communities, but also working with industries to engage communities. And so that's the title of my presentation, When Industries Engage the Community. And so a little bit about the Office of Community Engagement, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. However, if you want to know more, you're more than welcome to ask questions about it. It was created, as I said, back in 2010 as a direct report to the executive director. The purpose at that time was to improve our existing relationships and build new relationships with Mississippi communities. If you recall 2010, that was the year of the oil spill. It wasn't long after that that the office was created, and so I was thrown into the fire. There was no training. There was no take it slow. It was like get in and do your job. And so that's how I learned, basically just get in and do the job. And so we began to address community issues, starting with the Gulf Coast area right after the oil spill. Over time, the office has progressed. We began to use our knowledge about communities and different issues that communities are concerns that communities have. We began to use that knowledge to increase the internal awareness within the agency about those issues that may otherwise not be apparent. We've also begun to build the capacity of the agency to collaborate with other state agencies, communities, and industries to address environmental concerns. And so that's just some of the ways that the office has progressed. So one of the initial purposes of the Office of Community Engagement was to look at the environmental justice issues. Environmental justice is a term that was coined by the federal government, and through our EPA office in Region 4, we were able to get a definition. It's actually a federal definition, but EPA has kind of narrowed it down to 2 main terms. And here at the agency, we use those 2 terms to kind of develop our policy as far as addressing environmental justice. And the 2 terms within the definition is fair treatment and meaningful involvement. Fair treatment and meaningful involvement. And community engagement, which is the title of the office, is a mechanism used to attain meaningful involvement. And so I wanted to pull that term out because that's where I'm going to spend a lot of my time today, talking about how industries can actually function as a part of our efforts to engage the community. And so community engagement is a process through which community members are empowered to own the change that they want to see. And it involves communication, problem solving, governance, and decision-making skills and strategy. So I think the best way to really talk about the benefits of a industry doing community engagement is to actually look at a case. Now, I did not get permission from the industry to actually release their name and location and all of that, but it's a true story, and I'm just going to keep some of that personal information personal or confidential, but I'm going to give you some details about things that occurred as I worked with this industry to address some concerns. And so this case study demonstrates the mutual benefits of an industry engaging a community to address community concerns. And these were nuisances. And a lot of times what the community has concerns about happen to be nuisances. It's not all the time. Sometimes there are some major issues, some major pollution problems that the community is concerned about, but many times it has to do with a nuisance, whether it's dust or odors or noises. And so I want to talk about the impact of your daily operations, because that's what the community has concerns about, those daily operations that impact their quality of life. And so in this particular case, you had complaints coming from the fence line neighbors. These neighbors stayed possibly maybe 250, 300 feet away from the fence line of the industry. The complaints started coming in, and once we get complaints, as Gary kind of talked about, we send out our investigators to handle those complaints, to investigate, to see if there's any validity to the complaint, and then write reports. And if there are concerns that need to be addressed by this agency, those reports go to our Compliance and Enforcement Division, who then may, as a means of addressing the issue, issue out our agreed orders. It's not always the case. Sometimes there's some work that gets done before an agreed order has to go out, but there are times where in order to address an issue, we have to put out an agreed order. In addition to the complaints that came from the neighbors, there was also local government opposition, because the neighbors didn't just complain to DEQ, they also complained to the local government. They actually would call them first. And so there was opposition coming from the local government to this facility. In addition, and I think most importantly, there was no constructive direct communication with the neighbors. So while DEQ would go to these sites and conduct investigations and have conversations with the managers of the site, the plant operators, these plant operators and managers of the site would not have communication with the neighbors. And as you're going to see, that created some issues down the road. So we had to step in and kind of act as a bridge. There was some animosity between the community and the industry, and so they really were not on the best of terms. And so DEQ's Office of Community Engagement stepped in and kind of acted as a liaison, a bridge to help these two parties, the industry and the community, get together and have a conversation. And one of the things that we asked the industry to do was to take the processes that they actually conduct on site and explain them to the community. Because standing on the outside of the fence, only thing you see is the smoke or the dust, or you smell the odors, or you hear the noise. You don't actually know what's going on behind the fence. And so we needed that industry to translate the information about their work into languages and formats that the local population could understand. Also, we got the local neighborhood association to send an invite to the industry to attend one of their meetings. And we got the industry to accept the meeting. And there was a benefit from listening to the collective voices. And what the industry learned is that it's not just this one particular neighbor that we think it is or we assume it is, but it's the concerns of a few are indeed the concerns of many. And so they were able to hear that through the collective voices at the neighborhood association meeting. And so what began to occur is that the industry and the community didn't need DEQ anymore. And that would be my goal for all of these sites and all of these issues in various communities across the state, where there can be conversations and discussions held between the industry and the community outside of regulatory channels. We don't have to be there for you guys to talk. And so plans began to be unveiled. And the community had some thoughts about some things that could be done. And industry said, okay, well, we can agree to do this. But we need you all to want to have some skin in the game. For example, one of the things that the community recommended was that as a means of preventing some of the dust from escaping the property of the industry, that they put up some type of vegetative wall. And the industry was agreeable to that. However, they said, okay, who's going to manage the vegetation? And the community raised their hand and said, we'll be glad to manage it. You put it out there, we'll make sure it lives. And so that's one of the examples of that working together, those plans that begin to be unveiled. And so the minor changes begin to maximize the positive impact. So after, as I said, there was open and direct communication with the community. DEQ was not involved. Informal engagement. In other words, there did not have to be an official meeting for these conversations to occur. And the industry was no longer seen as an adversary. The community didn't see the industry as an adversary, and the industry didn't see the community as being adversaries. And they began to have open house meetings on the industry where they would invite the community in. They actually held a fish fry on one of the holidays, and everybody got together and fellowshipped. So the community began to feel that they had a voice. The community was informed. They knew exactly what this industry did as far as their jobs. And the industry had community support. It's funny now because, and I say funny in the sense that when I look back on things and look at the current situation, now this particular industry is owned by a different company. And so the community has made calls to me about the new company because the new company has not taken on the same mentality as this old company. And some of the things that the old company was doing, the new company is not doing. And so what I fear is that the new company is going to have to go through this same process because they have not taken the time to learn the community that they're in. But the old industry under the old owners had full community support. And so now I want to move into a part of the presentation where I kind of give some tips and some advice about some ways that you can do things. The first thing is don't wait until there's a problem to engage. You all remember the canned now and laters? I used to grab a pack of those and take them to school and sneak them in. That was at a time when you couldn't eat in the classrooms. And what was interesting about that candy says you eat one now and you save one for later. Now, if you were like me, you ate them all at one sitting. But my point in using that is that you have to engage now before there's a problem, and you have to engage later should a problem occur. So engagement is not a one-time thing. And so most likely the neighborhood or the communities, their curiosity and their expectations are already raised in some form or other. Either they are for the company or they are against the company. They've already made a determination in their mind. And so what you have to do is kind of head off that speculation, especially if it's a new project. And you have to go ahead and engage the community ahead of time so they can know what to expect. And you kind of help their curiosity out. Public comments are already being made. One of the things that we do here at the agency is that we notify people of if they request, they can get notification when applications come into our office. And so once those applications come in, you don't have to wait to start making a public comment. You can make comments as soon as the application hits the door. So a lot of times public comments are already being made. So don't wait until there's a problem to engage. Be effective about your engagement by doing it early. And so there's value to early engagement. It provides a valuable opportunity to influence the public perception, as I said. You get to interact with stakeholders when there's not an urgent need. You get to them before they are already upset about something. And you can have a cool-headed conversation. You can establish a relationship before there's an issue. And when conflict or crisis does arise, the absence of established relationships it puts the project at an immediate disadvantage in trying to manage the situation. And so another tip about different types of stakeholder groups, because a lot of times, and I've noticed this especially when I first started working doing community engagement, is that we don't really engage everyone that we should engage. We limit our engagement based on who we think should be engaged, but there are quite a few stakeholder groups that should be engaged in your process. Of course, the residents, and I use nearby port communities, but they, of course, I'm talking about all types of facilities, not just ports. Community-based partners. In other words, organizations, usually nonprofit organizations that have access to communities for various reasons. Internal stakeholders. Your employees are in stakeholders. And one thing that you could look at is, what employees do I have that live close by or within these communities that have issues? External stakeholders, nearby industrial facilities. Sometimes it's not just one facility causing the issue, but it's a cumulative issue being caused by multiple facilities. Government stakeholders, your state, your local, and your federal government entities. Local educational institutions. Local colleges have been a great help to me in my work, and getting them involved has proved very beneficial. And, of course, tribes, our Native American tribes, and we have to make sure that we take them into account, especially if we are operating in areas where they reside. So the benefits of community engagement. You begin your company begins to have a community competence. And I know when we think about competence, we're thinking about employees and can they do certain things and have certain skills. But the industry as a whole needs to have community competence. And what does that mean? They are aware and they know, they have knowledge about the community in which they reside. They are familiar with the community and its culture. They are sensitive to the community, and it's a genuine attitude of caring. It's not just on the surface, but there's a genuine attitude of caring. And then there's community action, where you take the knowledge that you have, the awareness that you have, and you actually make decisions that address the concerns. And so that's the competence level that I would like to see industries have when it comes to communities. And the most beneficial result of community engagement is the effective relationships and partnerships that you establish with your external stakeholders. And I'm going to use these two examples, and it came from different industries. These are not part of the case study, but I've seen several industries actually initiate and have community advisory panels that would meet on a regular basis. And what I liked about this particular method in engaging the community is that you didn't have to do the whole community. You didn't have to bring in the whole neighborhood, but you had representatives of the neighborhood, a group of individuals who live near or around the facility, and they represented the fabric of the community. And so that was a good way for that particular industry to gain knowledge about their community and use it to help them as they try to engage and address issues that the community was having. Another thing that I've seen done is how a industry worked through their employees to build links to local communities, because a lot of their employees actually lived around or near the area. And so they were able to engage internally, pull in those employees and talk to them about the neighborhood and what they need to know, and who was the person that they needed to talk to, who is the community leader or leaders, and how do we engage them, what's the best way to reach them. And so they worked through their employees to find a lot of information out. So I thought those were good examples to share. And so that's it. I've as Gary said, I've rattled on for a while, but I hope that you have gotten something out of one of the tips or benefits that I've shared.